Hello. Hi, I am Priya, short for Priyadarshini Majumdar, and I am the CEO and co-founder of ExploreMaps. Today, I'm going to talk to you about my journey with ExploreMaps, how we built our data pipeline, and how we ended up measuring what's relevant to measure. I will start with a nice story. This is how ExploreMaps began almost about a year ago. Once upon a time, there was a solo traveler, happened to be me, who was walking along the streets of Barcelona. Phone or a map in hand, she walked along the streets of the old town and lost, didn't quite know what she was seeing. Isn't that pretty much like all travelers? The next day, she was lucky. She found a local friend, and then he decided to take her around the old town. She said, "Yeah, I was just here yesterday, you know. I saw this building, it's quite old." He laughed and he said, "Of course it's old. This is where Pablo Picasso studied art, right in this building." He took her hand and put it on the building, and he said, "There you go. You've just touched 14th century." That was travel experience. And I wondered, why couldn't technology tell me this before? I got together with a group of wonderful people and we built what we call today as ExploreMaps. So let's forward 1 year since then. We just launched the beta version of ExploreMaps, and ExploreMaps is a visual travel planner for the social explorer. So what is it really? These are microblogs that are plotted on a map. So that way, information, especially travel information, is organized in one form. This travel information can be created by anybody. So if you are a travel enthusiast, if you know some interesting trails in Singapore, you can go onto the platform and you can create it. And this content can be shared and published. And basically, you can tell everybody about what you did. So now, no more spreadsheets, no more Google Sheets about how you actually share information. I will give a little demo of the product so you understand what the product is about and how the data comes from there. So this is just giving you some background. So what you see here is I just made a search for Singapore, and this is all the trails that has been put on Singapore. One of our core technologies that we are using is Google Maps here, and we're using Google Places API to extract information about the locations and then plotting it onto the map. And we think this information, when put onto the map, really benefits travelers in the sense that they don't have to get lost all the time. And since they come with little microblogs, you can understand that, oh, this place is actually good for this and not for that, etc., etc. So given this in perspective, I will go back to my presentation where I want to talk about how we ask the relevant questions to build our data pipeline. Let's go back 6 months from today. We had this grand idea in mind, we had the vision of the product in mind, but we had one big question, and that is, will people use what we're building? And we had to break this, in order to get answer to this question, we had to break this big question down into much smaller questions. At that point in time, which is 6 months from now, we had one MVP and we had a couple of questions. First of all, how do we know what our users doing on our product? This was the quantitative analysis. Second, how do they perceive our product? This was the qualitative part of things. And finally, how do we get hold of this information as fast as possible? Today, in this presentation, I'm going to talk about the first and the last, the quantitative, as well as how we did and how did we get to market very soon. All right, so those were the two questions, and we started categorizing our application and started understanding how we can answer these questions from the user perspective. So this is our user of ExploreMaps. And we divided them into two different significant kind of users. First is the viewers, and second are the creators. Viewers are travelers who like to look at information, who want to see the content, and they are consumers. Creators are those who want to put information onto our app. How do we measure our users? What are the relevant questions that we need to ask our users? So we thought that maybe one of the most important thing that will show their interest in our app is how are they interacting with the content, how many times pages were loaded, what are they searching for, where is the user journey dropping off. So that was from the viewer's perspective. From the creator perspective, are they creating trails? Are they publishing trails? Are they sharing trails, etc.? And then we took these questions and we mapped it to the most significant pages in our app. For example, the Trails view page, the newsfeed page, and the search page was very relevant to viewers. Trails view page was the page where people would view the trails. Newsfeed page would be the page where people are looking and searching for different countries and what all trails are there. And then finally, the search would be what kind of cities are they searching for. I'll tell more about this in detail in the next slide. It was similarly with the creators. We broke these questions, these smaller questions, down into quantifiable values. And what you see here is the existing measures that we have already in place today. For example, in the Trails view page, scroll count is important because that showed engagement, that people are scrolling and they're looking at content. On the newsfeed page, there's not just the scroll count, but likes on trails. So if there are certain trails and people like it, are they pressing it? How many times are they pressing it? And then second thing was, are they opening these trails up on a map or not? So that again showed the newsfeed page, the interest in the newsfeed page. And finally, the most crucial one was search. So what countries are they searching for, and where do these users live? This information put together gave us our daily active users. So number of page counts, scrolling count, and that happening on a daily basis gave us our daily active users. So now that was from the viewer side. We have something similar from the creator side, but from the creator side, we are trying to measure more of emotional investment into the product. So the number of times someone created a trail, from where did they create the trail? Did they publish it? How many times did they publish it? And yeah, whether they're editing, revisiting the trail back. So this is also directly linked to the probability of retention of the user on our product. Now, all of that was what and how, what and how, yeah. But what we needed to do now was how can we build it up fast? And what tools should we use to get to the market? Because as an early stage startup, you have money constraint and you have people constraint. So you have to put a lot of effort in building the product, and you cannot possibly put a lot of effort in figuring out how you're going to measure and building that side of the analytics and pipeline. So keeping this thing in mind, I'll show you how we did it. This is our tech stack, a very simplified version. Our front end is React.js. We have a Django backend, and we use a MySQL database. This is for the beta product that we have online right now. Every interaction on the React.js front end was passed down to Segment. Segment, I'll tell you more about it, but for now you can assume that this is our data layer. And from Segment, you can connect it to any kind of tool that you want to. We largely use Amplitude. Amplitude is what we use for data visualization, and MailChimp is mostly for welcome emails, etc. So now, why Segment, and why did we go for Segment, Amplitude, and not something else? So Segment is a third-party application. What they do is data integration. They have built up these integrations with so many services, not just Amplitude. They have it with Google Analytics. They have it with RDS, have it with Amazon, different services in Amazon. So you can actually build up a data lake. So what this did was it gave us just one bit of code that we needed to always focus on, which was the Segment API connection, and we didn't need to bother about any other integration. So in future, if I want to, let's say, put in some other kind of tool, all I need to do is integrate it with Segment, and it's just a one-click integration. So this is how we ended up building this data pipeline as fast as possible, and it took us like about 2 weeks from start to finish. What I'm going to show you now is an example of how we do it. And for example, the code on the newsfeed on the left that you see here is that of the div on the newsfeed. So one of the measures that we have is scrolling. So we have a non-scroll function, and we're measuring this on-scroll function, and this handles. So this goes to this thing called handle scroll, which is also another function which calls one of this particular key function, which is track scroll. Now, what is important here is the event name, the path, and the city. So if somebody is searching for Singapore on our app and it's scrolling, then this event gets passed. So it says that, okay, somebody's looking for scroll. It is coming from path newsfeed page, and they're looking at city Singapore. And what happens here is this track scroll 2 is eventually just JavaScript function, a JavaScript script, and it passes the event name, the path, and the city to segment. So that's how we send data to segment. What happens after this is the visualization on Amplitude. So this is just a simple screen, one of the simple dashboards, where you can see all the different events that get loaded, from scroll to city search, navbar, navigation. At this point, I will just do a short demo of, or I'll just show you what kind of dashboards we have built. As you can see, this is what I just showed. But some of the interesting things are when you go down, you see that people here, this is what do users search for. As you can see, people look for London, Mumbai, Georgetown, Dubai. And for an early stage startup like us, this is real market research. This is primary data. So we know what people search for. We also know where they're coming from. And that helps us build our content and do target marketing. So yeah, so this is just basically an overview of all the dashboards that we've built out of just one integration. Finally, I would just like to come back to an overview slide, which is called as the Delta framework. The reason why I put it here is to give a perspective of where the industry is versus where a startup should be. I myself have worked in 2 different banks and a financial service company, and I've worked in their data teams before. So this Delta framework came about to identify what stages different companies are on. So for example, as you see here on the first column is stage 1, which is analytically impaired, where there is really no data and people are not using the data that big companies are, that is already there. So that's stage 1 to all the way to stage 5, where you have analytical competitors. This might be a little small for you to view, but when you see the deck, you can also Google it. There's lots of information on the Delta framework. These are the success factors that they look at, whether the leadership is taking analytical competence very, very seriously or not. And based on all of this, it shows you where everybody tends to be. So in the last 1 or 2 years, what I've noticed working in different financial organizations is that the leadership has definitely moved towards analytical competence. But the biggest challenge that these guys have now is putting data together. But I think they're also getting there. So they're moving towards stage 4, where they are integrating and getting accurate, good quality data in one place. And eventually, they're also looking for professional analysts and they're giving a lot of attention to data science and data analytics. So compared to that, where ExploreMaps is, it is on stage 5, largely because we cannot do without data. Data is our only source of truth, and this is how we know if users like our product or not. Getting back to the very first question.
Thanks, Priya. Very valuable information and best practices for when I plan to build my next startup. So we've got a question in the queue in the live chat session. Lightning Streak asks, what are some other alternative tools of segment? Is that the only tool that you use, or is that what you recommend?
I would recommend that because, first of all, I think you're asking me because you want to start a startup. I'll just answer it from that perspective, though. Segment has a very good 2-year startup plan. That's one of their really big pros. And secondly, they have so many integrations. If you just open up Segment, you will see the number of services that they're integrating with is a breeze. And I think it is totally worth the money. I haven't found any competitors so far to Segment yet. And yeah, that's about it.